The landscape of Scotland has changed dramatically over hundreds of years. Have you ever wondered how this happened? It was all caused by tectonic plates, water, and lots more too. So the next time that you're standing in a forest, or standing on a mountain, or admiring a waterfall, wondering how it was all created, this film will tell you how Scotland came to look the way it does now.
What's up, my mammals? This is Sid the Sloth from the movie Ice Age, and we're about to do this new dance, the Continental Drift. It's time to get up on your feet. It's easy to do. Just follow me. Move it out. Do the Sid. Take it back. And do the Sid. Step left. Then drift. Step right. And then drift. Crisscross. And do the man-made. Crisscross.
Tectonic plates are segments of the Earth's crust that drift across the Earth's surface, moving the continents all the time. These plates are 80 to 400 kilometers thick, and their movements are known as continental drift. Early on in Earth's history, a supercontinent formed called Pangaea. Due to tectonic plates, Pangaea eventually separated. Also, Scotland and America were once together, and to prove it, there was an identical red sandstone found both on North America and Scotland. 450 million years ago, Scotland and America collided with England as the Iapetus Ocean closed. On the other hand, 60 million years ago, America and Scotland separated as the Atlantic Ocean opened up. Over long periods of time, the plates also change in their size as the margins are added to, crushed together, or pushed back into the Earth's mantle. It may not feel like it, but the tectonic plates are still drifting today.
Millions and millions of years ago, Scotland and North America stood at one side of a massive ocean called the Iapetus Ocean, and on the other side was England, and then Scotland, America and England clashed together due to plates smashing together. This is called a convergence boundary. Eventually, the Iapetus Ocean between them disappeared, and then the continents slowly collided. The collision pushed up the land, forming a massive line of mountains, the Daladian Mountains. These mountains were bigger than the Himalayas are now. Over millions of years, the mountains shortened down to the current size due to erosion.
I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went higher. And it burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire.
Approximately 60 million years ago, Scotland and America started to separate. This was due to two tectonic plates moving away from each other, which is called a divergent boundary. This particular type of tectonic action caused hundreds of huge volcanoes to form all over Scotland, especially in the west coast. The Isle of Skye particularly had many volcanic areas. When the volcanoes erupted, huge amounts of magma flowed from them, creating giant lava flows. These lava flows eventually cooled and turned into rock formations. Even today, you can still see the rock formations. For example, you could see a ripple effect, which is a rock formation you can find in some places, such as the Isle of Skye.
Let's kick it!
Around 2.4 million years ago, global temperatures began to cool, and since then there have been ice ages approximately every 100,000 years. During some of the bigger ice ages, massive sheets of ice, hundreds or sometimes thousands of meters thick, would advance across Europe. Therefore, these ice sheets would wear down the landscape and erode the mountains. The weight of the ice would push the land down, so when the ice retreated, the land would slowly rise back up again. For example, Scotland is still rising back up from the last ice age. Huge amounts of meltwater would also raise sea levels when temperatures began to rise again. Finally, the last ice age finished around 10,000 years ago, which means the next one could be approximately 90,000 years away.
During some ice ages, when temperatures began to drop, snow would stay all year round in hollows on the north side of the mountains. This snow would build up year on year and would start to form permanent ice. Temperatures continued to fall. Meanwhile, the ice would begin to gather so much it would start to move down the mountainside in a massive river to form a glacier. As the ice travelled, it pushed significantly huge amounts of rock and earth in front of it, carving out deep, steep-sided, U-shaped valleys. Later, as the glaciers disappeared, they left these U-shaped valleys showing where the glaciers had once been. And now, today, there are hundreds of these glacial valleys across the highlands such as Loch Ness.
Well, you can cry me a river, cry me a river. I cried a river over you.
Rivers began to form when the ice retreated and the meltwater formed streams which flowed to the sea. Soon after, the rivers changed the landscape by creating features like waterfalls. Waterfalls begin when rivers flow down steep slopes. Meanwhile, if soft rock lies under a layer of harder rock, then the river begins to erode away at the soft rock more quickly, and a waterfall is created. The waterfall further erodes the soft rock, forming a plunge pool. As the plunge pool is cut further back into the soft rock, it leaves the harder rock sticking out as an overhang. Eventually, the overhang will collapse into the plunge pool, and the waterfall will move back to a new position. As this is repeated, the waterfall will retreat further and further back, eventually creating a gorge. A good example of this can be seen at Gorrysalloch Gorge near Ullapool.
After the ice retreated from Scotland about 10,000 years ago, plants began to colonise the landscape. Firstly, grass and other small plants would begin to grow. Then shrubs like crowberry and the first trees, birch and willow, started to grow. After that, species like ash and hazel followed, and later still came oak, elm and pine. Eventually, the Caledonian forest covered most of the highlands, with mostly Scotch pine and birch trees, while in the south of Scotland it was dominated by broadleaf trees like oak and elm. These forests were home to a huge range of species, including large predators like bears, wolves and lynx, plus species we still have today, like wildcat, red squirrel, capercaillie and red deer too. Then, as man began to fell the forest to use the land for farming, the forests began to shrink. This felling continued in the native forest until only a few decades ago. Today, only 1% of the amazing Caledonian forest remains, but is still protected in magnificent places like Glenafric and Abernethy Forest.
Just like rivers, our beautiful coastline is constantly evolving. All of the waves and water hit the shores. It erodes the cliffs and shores. But also, when the waves hit the shore, they take sand, gravel and other debris, creating new land. Further out, some of the truly spectacular elements in our coastline are stacks and arches of rock, like the Old Man of Hoy in Orkney. These magnificent little extras in our coasts start out as narrow peninsulas, which are just narrow bits of land which point out in the sea. The sea crashes away at the peninsulas, which creates little sea caves. They eventually break through, creating arches. Those then break to create stacks of rock. At the very end, the mighty sea breaks them completely, then it starts all over again.
Over time, the landscape of Scotland has changed immensely. The landscape is continuing to change through ice sheets, glaciers, drifting and colliding continents, forests, waterfalls, volcanic eruptions, and coastal erosion. The next time you look at the landscape around you, think about all the processes which have shaped the lie of the land.